Madame Güney is a professor, doctor from the International Relations Department at Nişantaşı University in Istanbul. Madame Güney, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
We are really appreciated that you accepted our invitation. I would like to start with my first question. We know that Ukraine is a major exporter of grain to Africa and Middle East particularly, and millions of tons of grain trapped in Ukraine since the war, or we say Russia invade Ukraine. But now it started exported thanks to the Istanbul grain deal that was signed on July 22 by Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, and the United Nations. After the agreement, the Joint Coordination Center was officially inaugurated in Istanbul. Could you please explain how they call it Safe Sea Corridor, was made and signed in Istanbul, and how it works since then?
Thank you very much. Yes, it's a very crucial moment by the time this grain deal was signed between the warring sides in Ukrainian war. That is the peculiarity, actually. This is the first signature that was come out from the warring sides despite the ongoing war. And as you have mentioned, again, tons of grain was trapped in Ukraine because its ports were blocked. And since this deal with the initiation of Turkey's diplomacy together with the UN General Secretary Guterres has come about, it's a great achievement. And as you have mentioned, the sites, including the warring sites, as well as UN General Secretary and its team, and Turkey's existence was actually located in Istanbul in this joint coordinated center, and that is how, with the participation of all these parts, it was able to bring about this corridor, which is supposed to be a safe passage corridor for the ships to bring out this grain that was trapped in Ukraine, and it was luckily for the time being this exportation is going on without any problem. And so this is how the warring sides plus Turkey's assurance, as well as UN led leadership in this case, is helping to bring about this safe passage. It is because the coordinates and everything was in advance organized among these sites, and that is how it's happening. And the first, after the first passage, I don't know about the numbers, but it's luckily continuing on, and we know that this deal was about to continue for about like 120 days. This is the due that has been set with this agreement, but I'm sure that this is gonna go and continue afterwards.
It's very interesting, but we know that's very important that this deal has been signed in Istanbul. Could you explain also what is the socio-economic implication from this agreement will have the world, or is already has been the positive benefits? Does the food prices going down, or how it will change? How important this deal to the world?
I mean, it's so important. First of all, it could have triggered other crises. There was an expectation that if this was not realized, we know that, Ukraine and together with Russia, they are the world basket of grain as a whole that is being exported to the world, and especially towards the regions, global south, we will say, that are, imminently in need of this grain that they require. They were not able to access to it due to the stopping this trade due to the ongoing war. And so what would I say, that there was an expectation that if not sold with this grain deal, if this grain was not able to export out of Ukraine, the expectation is that this food shortages might trigger other social upheavals like in Egypt, Lebanon, or elsewhere. So this seems to be prevented in socioeconomic wise negative effects of this what has been achieved. If it was not achieved, there would be other problems. And so this is what we are seeing actually. The war that is going between the two sides is not affecting only the warring side. It has negative effects beyond that in major areas, like we are all witnessing this energy crisis and food shortages, especially in global south, and also there might be other crises in social way, upheavals that might have happened. Luckily, it has not been so. So that is why it is important. And what I can say is that, according to the global report on food crisis of this year, the expectation was that the food prices were going, not the food prices, but, the hunger among the global south, the countries in it, was going to be rising unexpectedly, so much so more than that it used to be last year. So this was an imminent issue that has to be tackled in a worldwide sense. This is important. And also, as far as I have read, by the time this signature was inked between Ukraine and Russia, once they have accepted this grain deal, the food prices has gone down. So, I mean, it is not going to be a sharp down on these prices probably, because there are triple effects that is affecting the prices of food around the world. It's because of pandemic that COVID-19 was this outbreak was realized. And then due to the war, there were trade cuts that we have mentioned. And also due to the, increase in oil prices, this has also affected the rise in food prices. But at least at one, major effect that is going to put forward pressure on the food prices has been somehow relieved with this agreement. So this is a good news for the, not just only the global south, but also to all our pockets, I would say.
Thank you. It's we see the effect, the positive effect. One of the reasons that we invite you, it's really the amount of the news after this deal has been signed in Istanbul is enormous, and every research center, every major newspaper, we see how the government around the world are happy to have this signed deal in Istanbul. But one of the questions is coming to my mind: how Russia signed, and there is some benefits for Russia after this agreement. Is there?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I mean, with this agreement, they had the chance of, exporting their grain as well. So once, even just before the signature of this deal, we have heard announcement coming from Moscow that they are ready to export their grain as well. So this is one thing that we have to underline. And also, despite this ongoing war, I mean, we cannot legitimize what's happening, especially by Moscow invading Russia since February 24th. But at least, with this deal, there is an opportunity at least to bring about some kind of a confidence building measure. This could be used. That's what I believe so. And at least there is a ongoing dialogue with the Russian side, despite the ongoing war. So this is very precious. That is what has been achieved, and I'm so sure that the Russian side is also aware of the importance and this dialogue channel being kept open. And this was due to the enormous diplomatic efforts of Turkey, as you know. So nobody is talking from the Western side with the Russians due to the sanctions and this condemnations about this Russian invasion about Ukraine, but so as to somehow at some point to stop this war, at least if not stop, but to get a ceasefire, you need to have a talk with the Russian sides. And with this deal, at least a dialogue channel has been opened up, and it's going forward, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point that you just mentioned. But when I make a little research before I was talking to you, before the war, in what I researched, Ukraine and Russia accounted for 29% of the global wheat export and 62% of sunflower oil. And now we can understand why the price of sunflower is just rocket everywhere in the world. So it's really important, and now we understand how is crucial to have this agreement, and particularly thanks to Turkey's diplomacy on this agreement. But if I am not wrong, you know better than me, does it true that this agreement will last October or November?
Well, as I have mentioned, it is due to last for about 120 days, but there is no hindrance to, repeat it from that moment on. So, I mean, since it's beneficial for relieving the pressure on the price of grain or sunflower, as you have mentioned, around the globe, I'm so sure that not only the Russians, but also, as you know, Ukrainians are benefiting from this deal as well. They're gaining a great deal of profit that they have kept, so far their grain blocked in the country. And once the grain that is blocked coming out of the country, namely from Ukraine, then they were becoming able to reproduce grain that is soon going to be exported where it is needed. So this is what I think so.
Okay, yeah, well, we hope it will develop or transformed as a total peace between Ukraine and Russia.
So. We hope so.
But many analysts, they think that this war will continue. Well, we don't know. But let's go back to about Turkey's diplomacy. I wonder why Turkey has able to make a field for this agreement and able to bring two enemies, let's say, on the table. Why not other European countries or Asian countries, but Turkey? And could you please give us some details how? And we really wonder, as we live in Paris now, and every major French newspaper and research center, they were mentioning about and they call it the success of Turkiye diplomacy. What we would like to hear from you is how process developed and how Turkey bring those two countries on the table.
I mean, as you have mentioned, even France's leader Macron has several of times attempt to bring the two sides together somehow to bring about at least ceasefire, but this has not been achieved, or other world leaders have either via phone call or visiting Mr. Putin, they try to assure that somehow a kind of a pause can be found for this ongoing war. But even from the beginning of the war, before it has started, we have seen that Turkey has brought about this, very successful diplomatic effort in bringing the two sides first in Antalya Diplomacy Forum, the foreign ministers together to prevent outbreak of the war. And later on, as you have seen and observed probably from Paris, that there was an Istanbul meeting again, and another attempt by Ankara was launched somehow to prevent this war, outbreaking. But this has not hindered, unfortunately, Russians, intervention and assault on Ukrainian territory as a whole. But even during the, phases of war that has lasted up till now and still it's going on, we know that Turkey, due to its previous, policies towards these countries, namely keeping open its dialogue with the two sides, and also keeping its stand as a neutral one, despite to the others, namely its, Western allies. They try to become a part of this polarization that came about during this war. And this war has reminded us that we are living through a new Cold War now, which lacks the ideological base. But through using this Ukrainian war, we have seen that a great power rivalry has already been with us. So this has, brought a great polarization among Russians versus the West. And Turkey, by, not aligning with this polarized, alignments that is facing one another, opposing one another, she brought another third way, which I would say it is a neutral way. And this was due to her previous relations that was constructed both with Ukraine as well as with Russians. So that is how the trust, the Ankara that has built trust over the years previously, has helped her to keep this dialogue, open with the both sides. And that is how she has assured the two sides to bring about on the same platform on the table. And that is how this diplomatic success of Ankara yielded to a positive product, which we have witnessed the inking this, grain deal. So this was very important. She seems to bring about a balancing diplomacy among the two sides, which was built on previously gained trust between the two sides. And it is a third way. Despite the matter of fact that she's a member of NATO, belongs to the Western part of the globe, let's say, Turkey was able to use its strategic autonomy that has built upon in the last few decades, I would say, that is based on capabilities of herself, whether it's its defense industry, whether it's a skill of using multiple diplomacy in a good way, or other measures, humanitarian diplomacy, so on and so forth. So this is the neutral stand of Turkey, being at the forefront of two sides, having equal measured stand towards the two sides, yielded to this outcome that the whole world has appreciated. I read last week's Le Figaro newspaper based in France, which also appreciated Turkey's this new launch of diplomacy.
Yeah, it's clear to be part of Western allies and NATO, and also deal Russia in this period of the time. It's really makes Turkey is one of the only country to able to make like a bridge between West and Russia. Well, in history, we have the fear of Russian expand in Europe, and as you know, that the campaign of the Napoleon to the Russia, and Russia has the mind of the West has the mind of from the Soviet Union, as you mentioned, from the Cold War period. But now what we see, the Turkey position, in one hand, it is one of the important country gives one of the important I will say like a gun or something like latest technology about drones to Ukraine, which we see it helps really Ukraine to defend their country. And the Turkey, its export its latest very famous now to drone technology to Ukraine, but also dealing with Russia in a good neighbor, but also is as a trade ally, as a good relation. It's not joining Western sanctions. But do you think this position is what, if I am wrong, please correct me, it's the only country that doesn't join the sanction in Western countries? Because it's, what do you think about it? It's a balancing, or is a new strategy for Turkey?
Well, actually, it's both, I would say. It's not a new strategy because Turkey, and not only in the case of Russia, in other issues other than UN-led sanctions, she was not referring to become of Western-initiated or imposed sanctions, because she doesn't believe that sanctions would be working to assure, Russia, which the Westerners hope to bring about. I was reading a piece this week that came out from Economist. You probably have seen it also. Sanctions are not working, and this war of this was written in a piece in Economist, and as we have seen, so as to sanctions to work, there should be a worldwide consent, and there is none, as you have mentioned. So, and this is one thing. This is what Turkey also believes in that. But other than that, she believes in continuing her this balancing conduct of foreign policy in regard to the two warring sides in Ukrainian war. That's one thing. She always tries to be just, and that is why she tries to balance her, policies in regard to two states. And there are numerous, examples that we can bring both before and after the initiation of war in Ukraine. But as I said, she's also not a member of EU, as you know. With regard to EU-led sanctions, she doesn't have any liability to impose these sanctions against Russia. But that is not the only matter. As I said, she doesn't believe that this is not the way of dealing or solving the problems between the two sides via imposing sanctions. That's all I can say, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's true. With this, it seems sanction doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Yeah, and the price of gas and oil is jumping, and as we see, the ruble, the Russian ruble, the money of Russian, was really losing their values from the beginning of the war, but now
it's improving.
It's interesting to see this impact. And
may I intervene?
Please.
It's because, I mean, some of the contracts that they have met, some of the European countries within the EU camp, I mean, since these contracts have not been finished, they are still buying gas. And so that's how, we know that since the prices of gas is increasing, Russia is making a profit from these transactions, not only from the Western camp. Also, Russia has alternatives of those countries that are there to buy its gas in Asia or in Far East, I would say. So that is the dilemma. I mean, even the Europeans, despite to the Green Deal that they have previously tried to achieve due to this Ukrainian war, they have already decided that they should increase their share of production of nuclear, as well as they rely on gas and nuclear, and they declare it that it could be considered as a green energy. So this is the dilemma of the West that especially the Europeans, I would say, are facing. And also one more thing I should add about the sanctions, how effective they are. We have already seen that Iran, for instance, was under the sanctions, especially after Trump has unilaterally withdrawn from the 2015 nuclear deal. And now, I mean, even the P4+1 or P5+1 countries have not yet bring about a deal with Iran. And also, they could not stop Iran to go at least a threshold country in nuclear sense with the help of imposing these sanctions. So what I'm saying that sanctions are worthless in case of assuring or countries like Iran or Russia, or there might be other countries in the future, as long as there is a consensus among the whole world, uniting about these sanctions to be implied together.
Yeah, that's in fact true, because before, for example, before France election, as European Union has agreed to transform the green energy, and a few years ago, France and Germany start to reduce amount of nuclear plant, and also amount of the fossil, particularly coal in Germany. But in Germany, they are going back to coal. Unfortunately, which is not good for our environment and planet. And also, France is going to plant a new nuclear center, unfortunately. And as we see, it's the price of energy is really crucial for all the countries, but particularly for developed country. Do you think these, from that point, countries like Germany, UK, and France, the major developed country, will be affected in coming years?
Well, it's not a secret. Everyone is writing and commenting about this, not only in Turkey, but in Europe and in Euro-Atlantic world, that this winter is going to be very difficult for Europe as a whole. Maybe, Great Britain might have a bit relief, but we are seeing that there are measures have already taken by UK governments to, bring about, energy efficiency methods so as to overcome these increasing prices of fossil fuels that they are using. And for Germany, it's going to be a very difficult year, I guess, this winter and even aftermath, because they were much more dependent on Russian gas, as you know, and the Russians are using this, energy card so as to make pressure upon, or they always use it anyway, whether rewarding or penalizing with whom they are dealing, under what conditions. So even with the Nord Stream 1, they kept on, loosening or opening, with sending this gas to Europe, especially to Germany. So, I mean, they look for alternatives, but they have not, as a whole, has succeeded in, finding an alternative supply for the Russian gas that they used to have it so far, because they were very much dependent on, for instance, in the gas-wise, 40% to Russia. And there are imbalances among the countries in Europe. We know that, for instance, Bulgaria case is so imminent, and they seem to be reclining to Russians to find a way out for their energy crisis. So it's going to be troubling times for EU countries, at least for this year. They took many, measures in bureaucratic wise. They have written papers coming out from Brussels, but this winter is going to be crucial and important lessons to be learned for Europeans, I'm so sure, despite to the imminent war that is going on, and it seems to be dragging for some time. I hope, they will try to somehow find ways of bringing up a ceasefire, that Ankara is saying that she's ready to help in diplomatic wise to bring about the two sides for this choice. Otherwise, life is going to be difficult for the Europeans.
Yeah, that's true. It's really, we feel that the hard winter is coming.
Yes,
which is true. Let's back to Turkey's diplomacy. In Turkey, it doesn't accept invasion of Crimea by Russia.
Yes.
Still, it's Turkiye see it like an illegal involvement of Russia. But same time, as we mentioned, Turkey has a good relation with Russia, and the many millions of Russian tourists every year coming to Turkey, and Turkey has a good trade with Russia and historical relationship. Do you think there is any hope that Turkey will able to really bring these two countries on the table and make ultimate peace? There is any scenario, any possibilities? Because there is no negotiator between these two countries. They just feed the Ukraine with the guns and the funds, and Russia is cutting the gas and oil to West. It seems like, I would not say they don't want, they come back to table to talk and deal with peace. But it seems if it goes on this way, if they West and particularly America backing Ukraine with funds and the guns and picturizing Russia as a devil, it seems to me there is no hope for peace. And that's the, again, we think how is important this grain deal has been made in Istanbul, and it gives us hope to cease fire between two countries. I would like to listen from you, is there is any possibilities?
Well, as you have mentioned, I mean, as long as the West is continuing to support Ukraine's war with the funds coming from mostly DC as well as other capitals and the guns as well, And also, on the other side, Russia seems to be very much determined to, gain what they have in mind in regard to Ukrainian war. They don't seem to, the two sides at this moment don't seem to retreat from their objectives. But I mean, if this has become, this was my thought at the beginning, as a war of attrition that was, supported by the West against Russia in this great war, great power rivalry. But as we go along to this winter, due to the difficulties of this energy crisis, and maybe this might also trigger other crises that we have mentioned at our talk at the beginning. So, I mean, if this goes along, it is not only the warring sides that's going to be hurt from this ongoing war in every aspect. People are losing their lives, and on the ground, as well as in economic wise, they are losing the two sides, and so on and so forth. But there need to be a diplomatic somehow opening, let's say, that Ankara is proposing. Otherwise it's going to be lose-lose for everyone, because Moscow seems to be this moment very much determined to turn this war of attrition towards the West over this Ukrainian war. We are using the several cards at her hand, namely the energy card or others. So one needs to be rational and hope that this dialogue channel that is opened very recently, thanks to the UN and Turkey's efforts by bringing this grain deal. I'm thinking that this could be used as a confidence building measure. That is how that in our relations that we witness in various conflicts up to now. You can bring about a deal, or bring about two sides to talk one another on certain issue. And if this grain deal continues, the two sides continue to benefit from this. This might open up, some kind of opportunity to assure the sides and bring them to table, at least to have a ceasefire. That could be a beginning for maybe somehow preventing this war at some point. This is what Ankara thinks, actually, and is still working on this diplomatic effort is being put forward and is continuing. But on the other side, there are other countries that they want that this war should continue. They somehow benefit from this continuation of this war, and somehow it's up to Europeans probably this winter what they're gonna suffer through, especially maybe not the governments, but the people, normal people will have this negative effects. They could make pressure upon their governments so that hopefully, Europeans might be assuring at least US to, somehow to come to a rational ground to assure Russians to stop, at least to have a ceasefire on the ground, so that people on the ground in Ukraine should have, breathe at least for some time. I would say in humanitarian wise, I'm also thinking. Otherwise, this is going to hurt not only the warring sides, not only Europe, but its effect is going to have been felt in a worldwide sense.
Well, thank you. It's we all hope the peace soon between Russia and Ukraine. It's really affect entire the world, and particularly the neighborhood and also Europe. Unfortunately, it was interesting what the Mr. Guterres, the General Secretary of United Nations, said. In addition to stabilizing global food prices, the agreement, the Istanbul Agreement, will bring relief for developing countries on the edge of bankruptcy and the most vulnerable people of the edge of the famine. And that's, to me, it's very important. This grain deal, it really, we might not see, but it helped millions of people to access the food. it is not a simple deal between two countries with the effort of Turkiye and United Nations. But when we see the entire world, this deal is really crucial. It's a life and death for millions of people, and which the Mr. Guterres said. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you for having me.
Really, we are appreciated to have you. And thanks again to joining us and accepting our invitation. Hope to see you in Paris.
Hopefully. Thank you very much again for having me. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.